Greetings everyone, Nanette Saylor here, and I've been promising to teach you a little bit about how to spark your creative energy, and today we're going to do that with the Scribble Doodle. What I love about this tool is that you can do this pretty much anywhere as long as you have a piece of paper and something to write with. My preference is to use a white piece of paper and to use a black or a blue pen, but if you have a pencil, that works too. The idea is we're going to make a scribbled outline and we're going to fill it in with designs. But there's a little bit of a trick to this that makes it easier for those of you who still have that voice in your head that says, I'm not creative, I can't do it, it's going to look ugly, no one's going to like it, I can't possibly do this. All of those things that are those noises, that voice from what I like to call your inner critic. This hopefully will help you put that aside. So before we get started, I want you to promise me that you're going to be willing to consider that you might be able to do this activity without worrying about it being perfect. And here's why. So we're going to start with a plain piece of paper and a writing implement. In my case, I'm going to use a black pen. I happen to be right-handed. That's what we call our dominant hand, the hand that you use all the time. So for this exercise, I'm going to ask you not to use your dominant hand, but rather to use your non-dominant one. And in my case, that is my left hand. So I'm going to put the writing implement in my left hand, and I'm going to simply put it on the page and begin to scribble. Now, I'm actually barely looking at the page in this example. You can look, certainly, but what I'd like you to focus on is try to have the scribble have some flow to it. There is no specific shape you're after. We are not trying to define this space in any way. My shape is probably a little more fluid than most of you. I'm pretty well practiced at this exercise. I do it a lot. If you've never held the pen in your hand before in your non-dominant hand, don't worry. However you can hold on to it, if you have to hold it like a fist, that's fine. The idea is just to get some outline on the page. And your page does not have to be this filled up. It's actually, I encourage you to leave space for you to put designs in between. That's the idea. So once we have this plain page with now our scribble on it, that's our base. And for most of us, we could probably agree that this would be okay to hang on the wall. And I imagine that there's a masterpiece in some modern museum of art around the world that looks not too dissimilar from this. But for this exercise, what we're going to do is to put your pen now in your dominant hand, the one you're most comfortable with, and begin to fill in the spaces with some pattern, whatever pattern comes to mind. Doesn't have to be anything extraordinary. You'll see as you go along that as you fill in the patterns, something begins to emerge here that becomes very interesting. Most important is that you continue to allow yourself to choose different patterns in each of the spaces. Consider the various ways that you can use lines and shapes. Now I'm using a triangle because I was using a fair amount of rounded shapes. And then sometimes it serves to turn the page. Now I see things a little differently in this direction. Combinations of styles of things. Embellish a little bit. Doesn't necessarily have to be an organized pattern. It could be just splatter dots like I'm doing here. And then if I begin to run out of ideas, I might look around my environment to see what I can find. And here on my desk, I have a journal cover that has some really pretty patterns on it. So I might replicate those a little bit. And the journal cover patterns are a combination of lines and dashes. So I might add those dashes in, see how it changes the way this looks. And I just keep going. And I keep filling in the spaces. Some lines you might choose to make thick and dark. Some lines thin. This is a dark bunch. But then maybe I come along and add some thin to it. You'll start to feel a sense of where you think more solid needs to be and what those solids might look like. How filled in they might actually be. There are no rules here. That's the most important rule. There are no rules. This is your creation, and the intention is for you to give yourself permission to play with this and to just see what happens. What's the worst that could happen? You don't like it and you give it up and you start again another day. You'll see how it evolves as we go along. And now something interesting is starting to happen, isn't it? I started to feel like I needed more circles somewhere. So here's some circles coming on. Maybe I embellish those a little bit. And that is a Scribble Doodle. So this is one that I've done with a fair amount of detail. So it's going to take me a little while to finish this. I may not finish it in one sitting. In fact, probably I wouldn't. I would probably work on it for 15, 20 minutes, and then I'll put it aside and come back to it at some point when I need to take a break. Maybe I'm working on a writing project and I need a break from that, or I've been through a series of calls on the phone and I need to take a break from that, or whatever repetitive process you're doing in the course of your day. When you need a little pick-me-up and you need to shake the cobwebs out, this is a great way to do that. So I want to encourage you this week to take an opportunity to begin one of these and also commit to the energy that it takes to complete it. Now, sometimes that takes a little bit. You may have to come back to it 2 or 3 or 4 times, and that's okay. Just keep going. That's part of the practice, is to test your patience with the process and at the same time continue to expand the possibilities that you might see in the different shapes. That's what it takes to spark creativity. That's the energy that we hope that you will then take from this activity into everything else that you do. Once you get comfortable with playing on a piece of paper like this and turning it into something that could be a masterpiece, then you begin to trust that it's possible for you to do that in other ways. The last thing I do want to say is, as you get more skilled at the scribbling piece, you might become more comfortable scribbling on a smaller piece of paper, and then it's easier to complete it in a shorter period of time. I actually prefer to do it that way so that I come to completion sooner. That's just the way I like to process. You may not want to work on something small. There is a theory that says that the bigger the thing that we work on, the more expansive our thinking. So you're welcome to embrace that. And in fact, if you wanted to even expand this beyond an 8.5 by 11 page, I encourage you to do that. Most importantly, please go out, try it. That's what these tips are all about. See what happens when you do, Just observe yourself without judgment. Resist the temptation to say, oh, this is no good. It's beautiful. It's beautiful because you've created it. It came from you, whatever it is. And you'll get so that you feel better the more that you practice it. That I can promise you. Lastly, please do share anything that you create. I love to see how new things evolve. Every time I teach this, someone does something unexpected, and it's absolutely magical. So please do go out and enjoy the process. Have some fun with it. Let me know how it goes. I really want to see your Scribble Doodles evolve. And with that, I will say goodbye. Enjoy the day, have fun creating, and let's see how we can take that energy out into everything that we do so that you then create your very best life. Enjoy.